I think that's an important thing right there because like a lot of times people like, spend a couple months in Facebook ads and they don't necessarily see the results they want. And they're like, oh, I just, wasted all this money. But it's like every time you learn what people didn't respond to versus what they did, that's so valuable.
Get ready to build, protect, and sell your expertise online with the Online Genius Podcast. You'll laugh. We hope you won't cry, but you'll always be informed and prepared so you can have the success you want. Here's your host, Bobby Klink.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Online Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink, and I'm really excited for today's show because we're going to be talking about a couple of topics that I honestly believe every online entrepreneur needs to understand. Facebook advertising and building sales funnels. And today we are joined by a fantastic guest, someone that I've known because she was actually someone who did my Facebook ads for me for a while, and she knows what she's talking about. And so I'm excited to have Emily Hirsh with us today. Now, Emily is an industry-leading Facebook ads manager and sales funnel strategist who's built an expert team of top-level professionals to help entrepreneurs grow their businesses using proven social media sales strategies and creativity that converts. Now, she also has some, very interesting, impressive story. She's quite young for how successful she is, and she's built an amazing business after initially building an amazing business that had to do with virtual assistants. So she is truly a fantastic entrepreneur, and we should listen to what she says. So welcome to the show, Emily.
Thank you. And thanks for that wonderful introduction. Thank you so much.
Now, I'm excited to talk about these topics, which I love, about funnels and Facebook ads, but I always do like to ask my guests a little bit about themselves before we get started. And you mentioned to me in preparing for the interview that you have never had a soda in your life. Now,
yes, that is true.
I've got to ask, what's the story there?
Honestly, it's because I don't like the carbonation bubbles. So I don't have any drinks like that. Even just like drinking alcohol is a little strong for me. Like I don't like the carbonation, so I won't drink drinks that have that. So I literally don't know what Coke tastes like or like anything. So I've never tried it. I've always joked around that I should like be on a Coke commercial, even though I never would because I won't represent that company. But because I could like try it for the first time, and it would be funny. But yeah, I've never had a soda just mostly for that reason. I don't like the carbonation.
Well, now, so let me ask you this. How do you know that you don't like the carbonation if you've never had it?
I've had like sparkling water, for example, or I have had like a sip of a Hansen when my brothers used to drink it when we were younger. And I knew I didn't like. I mean, I don't like it. Even like kombucha is too strong for me, like the carbonation. So as soon as I have it in my mouth, I just don't like it. So that's how mostly I think sparkling water when I was young. I'm talking like 6, 7 years old that I would take a sip and hate it.
I have to say that's an impressive story or history because I never had sparkling water when I was 6 or 7, but I've always loved soda, so I'm not in the same boat as you. Now, we could talk about this for a while because I think it's funny, but I do want to actually move to talking about the topics I brought you on for. And I'm going to start with sales funnels, and I want to talk to you about that. I mean, let's just start with the basics. What is a sales funnel?
Yeah. So the most basic way I could describe it is a customer journey. So it's how you are going to take somebody who has no idea about your brand, about your product, your offerings, cold lead, what we call, and basically turn them into a warm lead and a sale. So what does that journey look like? That is your sales funnel. And everybody has one, like any business that's doing sales has a sales funnel. It's just different, with what it looks like in online. It's been a very hot topic with ClickFunnels lately. And I think people think it's a new thing, but it's not. So just thinking about like, what is any company's customer journey years and years ago, people would do just direct mail. That was their sales funnel. So it's existed for a very long time. And it's that journey that we take people to turn them into a sale.
Well, yeah, and I think it was in one of Russell Brunson's books. For listeners, if you don't know, Russell Brunson is the man behind ClickFunnels, and he's written a couple of books, .com Secrets and Expert Secrets. I think it's in one of those, he talks about like the free samples they give out at a grocery store is an example of a sales funnel.
Yep.
But how does it play out in the online world, and how can entrepreneurs be thinking of like funnels instead of thinking in terms of products?
Yeah. So I can break it down into like the steps that we use and show our clients. And it's basically three main steps, which the first one is visibility. And so that's like just value content. It could be Facebook Lives, blog posts, just posts on Facebook. That's like your phase one where you're just getting that initial touch point with the audience. And then the next phase is typically some sort of way to get their information, their name and their email address. So it could be sign up for a free lead magnet, a webinar, whatever that looks like, that entrance into your sales funnel. And then the third one is the sale, and that usually turns into a combination of retargeted ads and a sales page maybe, and emails that you're promoting things. And so that's like really the three levels that exist in a sales funnel.
Well, so, and one thing you didn't mention there that I do want to address, because it may be the elephant in the room for the listeners. Like, I think sales funnels kind of sometimes get a bad rap because people have gone through a funnel where they have to say no like 87 times after they bought a first product. No, I don't want that upsell. No, I don't want that downsell. No, I don't want that. And so how can an entrepreneur kind of balance the notion of thinking in terms of funnels, but at the same time not annoy their potential customers?
That's where I really like to emphasize like the customer journey. So the question I always ask like my clients when they don't know what that journey looks like is like, what do you think people need to know and learn about you before they're ready to buy whatever that end result is? And so that's where you can then kind of create that journey. You don't have to be obnoxious and salesy and scammy. You just have to give people a clear path of like, here's how you learn about me, and here's how you realize like that this is potentially the product that you need or the service that you need. And so I think looking at that makes it come from a place of like connection and giving value, because when you're selling something and when you're offering a service, like you're providing value and changing people's lives. And most of us started our business because we have that passion and we love what we're doing. So if you just continue to look at it from that place, not as like you're trying to trick somebody or like scam them, because that's not it at all. And really those people are not successful if you're trying to do that in a sales funnel. So look at it coming from a place of like connection, and you're just giving people an intentional path that they have to go on to get to your end goal, which is your sale. But it's also like a product or service that's going to improve and change their life.
Yeah. And I think part of it's also just testing, right? I know when we were working on my funnel, we tried what's called, I guess, a self-liquidating offer. And why don't you explain what that is for the listener before I ask you the next question?
So like we had different levels of products. And so a lot of times one thing that I recommend clients do is have a tripwire, and that exists right on the thank you page. Let's say someone signs up for your lead magnet, then you have that very first offer for them on the thank you page. And it's typically like a great deal. So like you said, $7, maybe regularly priced like $47, and they have a limited amount of time that they can purchase it. And that's just, you don't make money off of that, but it's a way for somebody to get like an over delivery of value of your content, an introduction to your content, and then also help you pay for that ad spend. And it's a great way to measure, like, are we getting quality leads? Because if they're buying that $7 product, they likely will buy the next level. There's a lot of data that supports that the people who buy, the $500 offer, the $1,000 offer, like also bought those smaller offers. And especially if those offers like way over deliver value to them, then they're pretty like they become a very dedicated fan.
Yeah, I think listeners, what you need to understand is there's a difference between somebody giving you an email address and somebody giving you a credit card. Even if it's literally $1, I think there's data out there that says that $1 is a different commitment.
Yep.
Now, I want to talk about testing because, listeners, what is, Emily and I tried this with my offer, and for my audience, the tripwire never worked. No one seemed to ever buy it. And so we just decided, let's get rid of that and try to use that page for something else. But how do you go about running those tests to figure out what's going to work in a sales funnel?
I mean, so it all just comes down to tracking the data. And so you're looking at all the different touch points. So if you're like, let's go off of 100, for example, just for easy numbers, if 100 people come in the funnel, then what percentage of people are buying that first offer, are buying the second offer? What's your cost per lead to get those 100 people? So how much are you spending to make how much? And so you just kind of analyze all those pieces. And so for you, we could see like, okay, if 100 people came in the funnel and 0 people bought the tripwire, or 200, then like we either have an issue with the offer itself or the thank you page, the tripwire, the way it's, the copy, the way it's being represented, or, it could be the leads too. And then you have to look at like what's happening later on as they go through. And I think sometimes I do think people, like different audiences, I have clients who struggle with selling that like lower price product because they are maybe working with a demographic who like doesn't have time to consume it, for example, or they just like they want to go straight to like the done for you. And I think that's kind of a lot with your audience is people want the like done for you legal help and they don't necessarily want to learn it themselves. And that's kind of where we struggled and what we learned with a lot of our targeting and work on your funnels.
Yeah. I mean, I think quite honestly, Emily, it was my fault. I mean, I didn't have good messaging back then. I think I finally hit my messaging. I finally actually did the work I should have done before going to you by talking to my ideal customer avatar and really doing the research and finding out what they want.
But I think that's an important thing right there because like a lot of times people like, spend a couple months in Facebook ads and they don't necessarily see the results they want. And they're like, oh, I just, wasted all this money. But it's like every time you learn what people didn't respond to versus what they did, that's so valuable. And like, just like document that so that you can continue to improve what you're doing. And so I think like the fact that, like, okay, I was talking to people this way and it wasn't working. And like, now I've talked to them and I understand needs to be my messaging. That is super valuable and like worth it for you to have that mistake and like learn that and go on that journey.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think another thing, though, that is worth noting is people, I think, often they want to blame the notion of a funnel, say, oh, the funnel doesn't work, when it's not the funnel. I think you'd agree a funnel is not going to save you if you don't know how to talk to your customers.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's like step one. And like emotionally talk to them too on a deeper level and like, what are their problems and how are you going to solve it with your products and offerings and brand.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that they can just get, and again, I was guilty of this. When I first got ClickFunnels, I was like, ooh, I'm going to get this and it's going to solve all of my problems. Yeah. Well, it's not. I mean, it's a tool that you can use. You have to get that. But now I do want to transition because I think we were naturally going there to where you start the funnel, which is your Facebook ads. And really maybe you're starting the funnel before that. But I do want to talk about this because I know a lot of people, entrepreneurs especially, use it. But for maybe one of my listeners who has never engaged in a Facebook advertising campaign, can you explain why are Facebook ads so powerful and why is it such a valuable tool for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many reasons. And Facebook is, arguably, Facebook and Instagram are arguably like one of the absolute best and most powerful marketing tools out there because of all the data that Facebook has. So obviously there's millions and millions of users and they have data on you because of the Facebook pixel and like the activity that you take. And so number one, the targeting that you can find, I mean, almost everyone's ideal client is on Facebook or Instagram. So you can put specific content in front of exactly who you want on Facebook. But then even deeper, like I think their retargeting is huge and something that you can't do. Like when you go target on Google and YouTube, it's a lot of just like keywords and that's pretty much what you're limited to. With Facebook, I can put specific ads in front of people who have taken action such as watch my video or visited a specific page on my website or went to purchase and then didn't finish their order. And that's extremely powerful, that retargeting. And that's like one of the biggest things that we push in my agency for clients because we get incredible results with that because you can have specific ads to people based on actions they took. And then on top of that, the data that Facebook has means that you can take, an email list of people that you have and say like, I have 500 customer email addresses and I want more of these people. And you can go and create a lookalike, what we call a lookalike audience and tell Facebook, like, find me 1 million more of these people who match the same data of these 500 original people. And I think a lot of people, like when they think of Facebook targeting, they're very basic of just like, let me find the interest in the demographics, and they get really stressed about that. But then they forget about all the data that Facebook has on people and the actions they're taking. And honestly, the lookalike audiences and using Facebook's data and algorithms to my advantage gets me the best results for clients and in our campaigns.
Now, Emily, you would have smacked me upside the head if I had forgotten to do something. You were talking about retargeting. So I just got done with a long launch, and I'd run 2 webinars, and somehow I had forgotten and wasn't thinking about the retargeting. Luckily, literally 30 hours before I was closing the offer or thereabouts, so the day before, I said, oh my God, I need to do some retargeting. And so I did. I spent $342 in those ads, and it netted me $3,600 in sales.
Yeah.
So listeners, retargeting is one of the most powerful tools you're going to have.
Yes. And like Facebook is one of the only places that you can do that level of retargeting. We just did an 8-figure client launch, and we did retargeting ads to our sales page and people who abandoned the cart.
Yep.
And she spent $1,100 and got 617 purchases to her $2,000 product. So that's $1,100 for a 1.1 million, which is like 10,000 ROI or something crazy. I mean, that's probably my most extreme example, but it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. And my ROI wasn't that great, but I think, it was 10 to 1, which I think most people will take a 10 to 1 ROI every time. But the other thing you mentioned there is the power of kind of the data they have and the targeting. So how can people start to create effective targeting sets other than what you mentioned of say, hey, here are my leads, find me people like this? What are some other good tools people can use to get a good target set?
One of the best things is interest-based, because that's like pages that your followers are following is the most accurate, because we know that for sure. Facebook tries to guess on income specifications and are they a mom, and those are not always 100% accurate. So figuring out what pages that your ideal client or customer follows is like first step. I would make a list of 20, because you can't always target them. That's the thing. And it's kind of frustrating because sometimes a page has 1 million followers, but they don't come up as a targeting option. And we don't know exactly why. It's just Facebook feels there's not enough data on that group of people or whatever it is. So make a list of 20 potential pages that your audience is following. And then you'll probably find half become targeting options, and then test those against each other and see which ones convert for you to the lowest, cost per lead or the most valuable audience.
So now, and Emily, I think I'm remembering this right, because you're talking about testing audiences and things like this. Mm-hmm. I think I remember learning from you, and I could be wrong, but I seem to remember that when I was working with you, but also I'd taken your Facebook ads course before, you would set up, I think each ad set would be very particular, mm-hmm. and you would not let Facebook do the kind of automatic deciding which one was going to work. Are you still in that camp, or now you leaning more to let Facebook do some of the optimizations on its own?
I still separate out the interests most of the time. I'll test both, honestly, sometimes, because it's all testing. And what's crazy is one client, it works well to combine stuff, and one client, it's better to separate it. I'd say 85% of the time we separate out the audiences, because the thing is, if you put in all those 10 interests into one ad set, so one place, and then you ran it, 2 of them might work well and 8 of them don't, but you're paying to show your ad in front of those 8 other audiences that are not working. So with that, with interest, you can't tell. Facebook I like to have it optimized for men versus women, because you'll see when you look at the breakdown, it does do that really well automatically. It will spend the budget better, if men are responding or women are responding better. Same with the age. It seems to do that. So I don't get really crazy. And it obviously also depends on the client's budget, because the more you separate, the more minimum spend you have to have for each ad set. So we separate out the audiences for sure, the interest, because that's the one that you can't tell. When you break down the data in Facebook, you can't tell what one is being spent to where. And then we'll sometimes separate out the countries, because that's another one that you'll sometimes get way better in the US, and you're targeting Canada too, and you're wasting money showing it in Canada. So it's a little bit of both, and it comes down to testing.
Yeah. And when I think I first started advertising and first started working with you, at that point, Facebook would automatically optimize all the ads within an ad set, but it would never did optimization among the different ad sets. Now they've added that function where you can tell your campaign, I want you to spend whatever it is, $500 a day on this campaign. You figure out how to spend it among these ad sets. Do you ever use that tool?
Yeah, we sometimes do. It does work. Facebook is very smart, and its data is very smart. So again, testing, we do, and that's a newer thing. We have been using that, and it does work, but I still separate out within that the different audiences so I can see what's working, because then I want to know that for future campaigns so that I don't waste budget, targeting an audience that I know doesn't work because it never worked, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so yeah. And I think that's a fair statement. And I used it recently as part of my launch. I didn't really do that launch perfectly. And listeners who've been here a while actually did my only solo episode I did recently talking about the launch. But I decided I think on a Saturday, I decided I was going to do a webinar for the launch that was on Tuesday. And so I think I just put a big budget and told Facebook, here's a bunch of different ad sets I want you to optimize, because I knew I wasn't going to have time to do
How did it work for you?
It worked pretty well. I got positive ROI on the direct to webinar ads both times I ran them. So, it was the first time it was a much better ad spend or a much better ROI. I did 2 webinars. The first one, I don't remember the exact stats, but I think I got 2 or 3 times return on those direct ads. Then the second time, I think I got about 100% ROI on my direct to webinar ads to a cold. I mean, I say a cold audience. These were not retargets. They were not any warm leads. So
yeah,
it worked out well. I mean, I can't complain about it, but
yeah. I mean, Facebook is definitely very smart. And I do see sometimes that people try and separate everything out. They'll even try and say run my ads at these times and then turn them off. And that typically never works. You got to let Facebook's algorithm play a part of it as well.
Yeah. And another thing, a part of that, so I've heard, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I've heard that now Facebook says that whatever you're asking for, if it's a lead conversion or a purchase, whatever it is, for its algorithm to really be able to optimize, you have to get 50 conversions in a 7-day period. Is that generally the rule that you kind of try to apply?
Yeah, it is true. And you'll even see in there that they have learning phase. And so they'll tell you when they're still learning about the ad set. So we try and get it to be, outside of the learning phase before we make a decision. However, again, depending on if you have a small budget, sometimes you can't wait that long to make a decision to turn something off. And so our typical way we run in our agency is within 1 to 48 hours, if there's no conversions on an ad set, for example, in a specific audience, and it still says learning phase, I'll turn it off, because if it's basically double what my threshold would be, so if I want to pay $5 or less cost per lead and I've spent $10 and there's 0 leads, I know it's not really likely to catch up really fast. But if I've gotten 1 lead in there for $10 and I want to pay $5, it may still optimize and start to improve better. So it's kind of letting it do its learning, but then also using your own smart, about what to do and what to turn off, because there's only so much that it will catch up and optimize.
So I guess here's the question though. Is it better? I assume if you have a small budget, you should not test too much. You maybe want to have 2 different ad sets and put as much budget as you can to those 2 ad sets to give it as much of a chance as possible to optimize.
Well, it depends. Let's say you're working with $20 a day, then I would do 4 different ad sets at $5 a day. And then in 2 days, maybe 2 of them are not working and 2 of them are. So turn off those 2 and then replace them with a new 2 and see if you could, then test another set of audiences. And then out of there, you want to know what version is converting the best. So what creative, and then you can start sending that to different audiences. So you're using that top converting version.
Yeah. And here's a question that I know a lot of people have. I always see this question asked, and you're probably going to squirm when I ask it because I think there isn't a good answer. But people always want to know, what is a good cost per lead? What should I pay to get someone to sign up for a lead magnet, for example?
So for a lead magnet, I usually say anywhere from $1 to $4 is my goal for a basic download, obviously depending on the industry. So business to consumer is usually a lot cheaper. I've got clients at 80-cent leads who are targeting fitness, for example, converts super low to leads, but then it's usually a lower percentage to sales. Webinar is more expensive in the $3 to $8 range is pretty average, because the more of an ask it is for the person. So if you're asking them to come to a training, you're going to pay a little bit more, but it's a more valuable lead for you.
And so I'm guessing, though, one thing that is a good way to bring those costs down is and you mentioned this when we were talking about funnels, you're going to have some content, say Facebook Lives, or get people to look at your blog posts, because you can get those conversions much cheaper, right?
Yeah. For video views, we pay 1, 2, 3 cents for a 3-second video view, and you can get less than $1 clicks to your blog post. So if you do that, and then retarget people, then they've already had this touch point with you. So not only are you most likely going to pay lower cost per lead, but they also will be more likely to buy on a webinar, for example.
Well, so here's my question on that. And I think I never really understood this. So how do you then figure out what your cost per lead is there? Because don't you have to kind of build in the cost you paid for those, video views and for the blog post views and add that to whatever you pay on a cost per lead once you actually do the retargeting campaign?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is difficult to know exactly, but I think you just calculate it in the total ROI. So then you look at if you had, let's say 3 levels where you're doing videos and a webinar and then a sale, then you just take total ad spend of everything and then calculate that into your total ROI. So it is difficult. I mean, it's difficult to see the cost per lead because you can't break it apart, but I usually just break in what am I paying total?
Yeah. So basically you basically do what was the total spend and then divide it by how many leads you got at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay. And then also looking at total spend and how much you made. And so what was your ROI return on? Yeah.
Yeah. So and one other thing I do want to talk to you about is writing your ad copy. And I have to admit, this was a place where I was really bad before I started working with you. And Emily, you probably don't remember this much of my story, but I had spun up some ads after taking your course. And again, I had not done any work. I had not done any of the research. And I was paying, I think, I don't remember, it's $30 or $60 a lead. That's obviously not sustainable. And part of what I learned, part of it was the targeting, but part of it was I was writing horrible ads.
Uh-huh.
So what is the key to a good Facebook ad?
So I do have an amazing copywriting team, but the key there is the emotional connection. And so the storytelling, like we just talked about, knowing who your market is and how they talk and what their problems are. You need to have a deep understanding of that to be able to write copy that catches their attention. And so anytime I see an ad that's not converting and I have to go in and look, a lot of times I'm the copy needs to go deeper. We need to get on a deeper level. It needs to stand out. So that's one part, the emotional connection, so you can get someone to stop. It doesn't, you don't want it to feel like a spammy ad. You want it to feel wow, I really related to that. So a lot of times storytelling does a great job with that. White space in the copy always works better. So you definitely don't want really bunched together a bunch of, nobody will read that. And then having the very first sentence is very important. Sometimes we'll capitalize it or put emojis there so it grabs the attention. The headline is obviously really important. And then you should definitely test, does your audience respond better to long story copy or a little bit shorter copy? Test some different headlines in there. But again, bottom line, I think, is being able to pull out that storytelling and emotional connection to your audience, regardless of what industry that you're in, honestly, because that's what people respond to that. They want your product, they want your offering, but they're also going to act on an emotional response that they get when they're scrolling the feed.
Yeah. And in my experience with my audience, I know part of my problem before I started working with you was that I was using 2 short paragraphs in my ads before. Yeah. And you guys developed these ads and I've carried over that. Now my Facebook ads, I've sold someone before they hit my landing page. So I tend to get, on a lead magnet, someone hits my landing page. I'm not happy if I'm getting less than 60% conversion.
Yeah.
And is that how you generally view it, that you should have already sold them by the time they click?
Honestly, yeah, the Facebook ad should do the convincing, especially for opt-ins, and then they're just going and clicking and signing up. And that's why super basic landing pages work, because you do the explaining and the convincing in the Facebook ad. And even if I think about my own habits, and probably you too, it's when you click something, you're pretty sure you're going to sign up for it. Not a sale necessarily, a sale needs to have good sales copy on there, but an opt-in, it's okay, it's just my name and email. I'm already convinced when I read the ad if I want it or not.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And that's one of the things. It's strange. Now I'm in these various groups, people are posting things and I'm able to actually advise them, not as well as you could, that's for sure. But yeah. I can look at copy. I'm yeah, you need to do a lot more in your Facebook.
Well, you're a very good student for sure. You what's working and what's not working.
So one last issue I want to talk about is images, because I know images are important. Are there rules of thumb that people can apply? What kind of images tend to work?
So, images of people, again, because of that connection piece and that emotional piece, I think work really well. We test both images with and without text just to kind of compare the conversion. And I honestly have clients who convert better with some headlines on their images and without. I think images are so important because that's the biggest thing that someone's going to see. So if you are using a headline on the image, like, it better be really good and really eye-catching, and test different ones. Good design is very important because if it looks like you just went in and DIY'd it in Canva, like, that's going to really stand out. So again, I have great designers on my team that I'm really hard on, that we have to stand out. Like, you have to stand out with different, like, very high level professional design. And we, test different headlines and have good headlines. And then we use quality images. Like, there's an interesting thing there where, yes, like, professional photo shoots and quality images are good, but I also have a lot of cases where very organic looking lifestyle photos that have been just taken with a cell phone work really well too, because if you think about it, that you're trying to not make it look like this super polished ad, but then we also want to look at pretty things as people and humans. Like, it needs to look good, not ugly and messy, but it also doesn't want to look like so polished that it looks fake. And so we have clients who, like, will put up a picture of, like, they just shot it with their cell phone with their kids or something, and it does really well. So I think that's important to think about too. Bright colors do really well. Obviously, they stand out. I do find that a lot of times, like, if you're driving to a basic opt-in, that just an image and text works better than a video, because sometimes I think watching a video is like the action that the person took. So then they won't, like, click and opt in. With sales, the video usually works well. I also am seeing, like, kind of off topic of this, but Insta story ads are, like, just killing it. So definitely implement those.
Yeah, I've got to figure out Instagram at some point. I'm on it, but it's one of those things I know I have to do. And I'm trying to figure out how to do a 15 seconds you get for those?
14 less than 15 seconds. So it's got to be like 14. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, the images are funny. You may get a kick out of this. The one that performs the best for me, it's just this picture of a red, like, it's like a cherry bomb with a lit fuse on a black background. That one has been the one that I think, because it's bright and people are like, what in the world?
Yeah, it's bright. It makes them stop scrolling. I mean, that's what you want to do, is stop the scroll.
Yeah. And that's what I've always explained to people. The image makes them stop the scroll. Then they're going to read the headline. So that better be good. And then they'll read the copy. Is that generally what you find?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think this is all great advice. And we can't possibly make people experts on Facebook ads in one session. But I was like, kind of small steps that people can take for my listeners. So what is something, if someone wants to start with Facebook ads, what's something they could do, say, in 5 minutes a day or get done by the end of the week to kind of start figuring out the process of launching a Facebook ad campaign?
So it depends, obviously, if you have a funnel ready to drive traffic to, like a lead magnet. So I'll give two answers to that. If you don't have a funnel ready and you have to work on that, and that takes you time and you need that, then you can start with, like, go to a Facebook Live and then promote that and test some different audiences. And the things you're looking for there is the percentage of the video that they're watching and the engagement. So you're getting comments and likes, and that's how you can kind of judge the success of the different audiences. And that's easy. I mean, I know Facebook Live sounds scary, but that's my first thing to people, because as you're building out a funnel or you're working on your offer, or whatever it is, if you can go and start doing visibility tactics, it will be so much more successful once you go and launch. And then if you do have a funnel, then just starting a conversion, campaign where you're testing your cost per lead and start testing different audiences. I don't think you could do that in 5 minutes a day of just, like, setting it up, but get a couple versions of copy and images and then test some different audiences and just spend, $10, $15 a day and start trying to figure out what audiences are converting and, what people are responding to in terms of the messaging, so that you can then continue to refine that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And look, yeah, you're right. You're not going to get that done in 5 minutes a day, but you could definitely get that done by the end of the week and start collecting data and start finding it. And what I'll tell you is, I've been running ads now, I think, for the better part of 9 months or more. And as a result, I have a good sense of what targeting seems to respond.
Yep.
And that data is invaluable. Now, when I want to spin up some ads for a webinar, I can do it because I have a set of, core sets of targeting that I know will tend to respond. So I think that's great advice, Emily. Now, and you've given a bunch of great advice. Now, if listeners want to get in touch with you, learn more about your services, or I think you have courses, where should they go to get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best thing is just my website, emilyhirsh, hirsh.com, where I have tons of info. I've got Emily TV on there. We're also launching the Hirsh Marketing Report next month, which basically is going to take all the data, because we have, 55 active clients. And one thing I've realized is we see so much behind the scenes of data of what's the average cost per lead, what's working, what's not working. So I'm going to basically publish a monthly marketing report, on that and what we're seeing is working and not working. And I think it'll be pretty valuable for people.
So that'll give people a sense, for example, of if kind of it looks like on average webinars, direct webinars is getting harder to do or other things like that. They'll get a sense of that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
That listeners, that is worth, its weight in gold. I don't know what she's charging or if it's free, but
it's free. It's free sign up. Yeah.
Then it is definitely worth it, because understanding those things I think will be hugely valuable. And I can tell you, literally, I have come leaps and bounds in my ability to run my ads myself. And I'm probably going to go back to using Emily probably in the short term soon. But I got better from working with her and her team for a while. So you can definitely learn from Emily. And so I definitely encourage you to do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
And thank you for being on the show, Emily. It has been fantastic.
Thank you for having me.
Listeners, that's it for now, but stay tuned for my quick legal lesson after the break.
And now for today's legal lesson.
Yay! Okay, I got to admit, I love Emily. I think she's a fantastic entrepreneur, and I think she gave some great advice in that interview. Now, I want to tell you, I'm going to take a moment here to point this out. If you're someone who's interested in entrepreneurship and seeing stories of success, I strongly recommend that you follow Emily. She is dynamic. She's fantastic. And she's accomplished a ton without being, an old hat like I am. I mean, she's accomplished a bunch pretty early in her life, which I think is quite impressive. She has a lot of great stuff out there. I took a course from her at one point, which was a good start on Facebook ads. I used her before as my Facebook ad manager. And as I'm recording this, I've actually just signed up with her again because I think she does a fantastic job. She's built a fantastic business. And she's not just a Facebook ads manager. She's someone who understands sales funnels and those concepts, so she can really help you. So if you're looking for someone, I would give her, 18 thumbs up or however many I could possibly give her. So I would definitely recommend you give her a shout and give her a try if you're looking for an ads manager. But I want to get to the legal lesson. I'm not going to just sit here and talk about how great Emily is, although I could do that for quite a while. And today's legal lesson, I want to talk about a couple issues about what you need to do to stay in compliance with Facebook's ad manager rules. And this has to do with a couple things about how you're retargeting and providing offers to people on Facebook. Now, there's a few different things here that I want to talk about, 3 in specific. First of all, if you're going to use the Facebook pixel, which if you're going to do Facebook advertising, you've got to use the pixel. It's the way that you retarget people who visited your website and can even do very specific targeting, for example, of people who visited a particular sales page and things like that. So you've got to use a pixel. You just have to do it. And the important thing is that under Facebook's terms of service, you have to disclose to people that you have the pixel on your website. Now, that doesn't mean you have to put a pop-up or do anything like that. You have to tell them in your privacy policy. So you need to have a privacy policy on your website, and that privacy policy needs to disclose to them that you use the Facebook pixel. And you should also have information that, hey, you're going to use information collected from them to target advertisements and or to make promotions or offers to them. So that's the first piece. Just base level, you've got to disclose that to them. But there's 2 other issues that I wanted to address. One of them, hot topic recently. A lot of people have asked me, what about the GDPR and the Facebook pixel and Facebook ad targeting and all of those things? The good news is you don't have a lot of responsibility when it comes to the Facebook pixel and disclosing it or complying with the GDPR. I don't want to get too down in the weeds, but under the GDPR, there's what's called a controller and a processor. And for 90% of what you might be doing with the Facebook pixel or Facebook advertising, you are neither the controller nor the processor. Facebook is both. And that means Facebook is the one who's responsible for getting the permission. Now, that's why they have the requirement that you tell your users, your visitors, that you use the pixel, because that's part of what they need to get their compliance. But you don't have a responsibility for the most part. The place where you do is when it comes to creating a custom audience based upon your email list. So if you load people's email addresses, this is a common thing you're going to do, is you're going to take your email list and you're going to load it into Facebook to create a custom audience. That way you can show ads to people who are on your email list. You're also going to do things like create a lookalike from that, where you have Facebook say, okay, well, here's your leads. Let me find a group of people who are similar. But the important part is when you do that, when you upload your custom audience, you cannot upload people's names who you do not have the right consent or permission to use under the GDPR. That's part of the change to their terms of service that Facebook made. So you have to make sure that any email list that you upload to Facebook for the purpose of targeting your ads to is GDPR compliant. Now, luckily, if you're in the United States and you're like me, I target my ads to the United States. I don't target people outside the United States with my Facebook ads. That being said, if I uploaded a list that included people in the EU for whom I did not have the right level of consent, I would be violating Facebook's terms of service. So you don't want to do that. So to comply with this, what do you need to do? Well, you just need to get in compliance with the GDPR generally, make sure that your list is compliant with the GDPR, and then you need to actually just use that list for your custom audience. So that's the second issue, complying with the GDPR. The third issue is related. And this is, again, an issue under Facebook's terms of service. A lot of people don't realize this, but Facebook's terms of service also says you can't upload the names of people who have unsubscribed from your list. So you need to make sure that whatever list you're uploading to create a custom audience is a list that doesn't have people who've unsubscribed. You just need to make sure that you're only exporting the names of people who are active on your list. That means you need to make sure that whatever provider you're using will allow you to segment out and not include the inactive, unsubscribed people. If they won't let you do that, you're going to have to export it and then do some searching, do some organizing, delete the people who have unsubscribed. Again, there will be a column, so you should be able to do that. And then upload that cleaned list of actual subscribers, not people who have unsubscribed. So that's what you need to do on that issue to stay in compliance with the Facebook terms of use. So again, the three things that you need to be thinking about from a legal perspective when you're dealing with Facebook advertising are, again, that first concept. Well, first of all, let's kind of work backwards from the end. The last two things we talked about have to do with your email list. And the concept there is you need to make sure that whatever list you're uploading is only a good list of subscribers who are GDPR compliant. That's two pieces in one. Make sure that your list is only people who are currently subscribed and who are compliant with the GDPR. And then the other piece is you need to disclose that you use the pixel in your privacy policy. You do those things and you'll be in good shape when it comes to legal compliance with respect to Facebook advertising. So that's it for this episode. Got another great episode coming next week, so I hope you'll tune in then. Until then, this is Bobby Klink saying have a great week.
Thanks for listening. And remember to visit mistakes.youronlinegenius.com to get your essential guide to the 4 legal mistakes that can doom your business and how to avoid them. Join us next week for another episode to expand your online genius and your success.